Friday began with reports that Anthony Scaramucci, a former Trump campaign advisor, was going to be the new White House communications director, and shortly after that we heard that Sean Spicer had resigned as the White House press secretary. Now those two events seem like they could be related because Scaramucci and Spicer, along with Reince Priebus, who was the chair of the RNC when Spicer was the spokesman for the RNC, don't get along great. And so if Scaramucci was going to be in, it was difficult to imagine him and Spicer working alongside each other in concert going forward to direct the White House's messaging.
I would love to have Sean here. Sean decided that he thought it would be better to go.
Scaramucci is a businessman, and so in a lot of ways I think the president sees some of himself in Scaramucci. He is not a communications pro. He is not sort of a tried and true campaign hand, who has been a spokesman for politicians in the past or even led behind the scenes communications strategy. But that's also consistent with some of what we've seen from Donald Trump.
But before I get to the news of the day, I think I'd like to discuss a little bit of the coverage of the past 24 hours.
Really, since day one, Spicer has been a marked man, partly because of that big-time debut.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
He sort of memorably rattled off bogus statistics about the president's crowd size at his inauguration. Reporters called him out for it. He didn't take any questions. He was out there ripping the press right from day one, and the relationship really never got better after that. Spicer's role in the White House, at least his public role, has been diminishing for a while, and a good marker would be to go back to May when the president went on his first foreign trip. Remember, Spicer went along. There was that memorable episode in which he was hoping to meet the Pope but didn't get to. That was widely seen as a slight. We hadn't seen Sean Spicer at the podium since late June when he finally made an appearance this week, but that was off camera. And that's the other piece of this too, is that the White House has been less visible, period, regardless of who is speaking for it, because they haven't had an on-camera press briefing since June 29th. We're at the 3-week mark where there hasn't been a single televised press briefing by anybody.
Wow, got a full house today. Good afternoon, it's good to be back with you. Apparently I was a little missed.
Sean Spicer suffered from a real credibility problem. He would say things that were just provably not true, and at other times he seemed to be out of the loop. In recent months, reporters have increasingly been asking him questions that he simply doesn't know the answer to.
And I think sometimes we don't have an opportunity to get in to see him, to get his full thinking. In those cases, we do our best to follow up with you.
Look, Spicer had his share of missteps that he brought on himself, but it's also important to keep in mind that the job that he has is kind of an impossible job. He's speaking for a president who really prefers to speak for himself, and what that often means is that the president's message and the one that is apparently carefully crafted by Sean Spicer and other members of the communications team are not the same thing. So it is very difficult to be a communications director or a press secretary for this president because you're not really empowered to direct the message. The best message crafting you might do might be undermined the next day by something the president says or tweets.
Thank you. Bye.